Have you ever observed that when you genuinely begin to transform, the people surrounding you start to feel uneasy? They won't express it directly, naturally. They'll mask it with humor, with guidance disguised as worry, or with that uncomfortable quiet when you discuss something profound. But fundamentally, what's truly occurring is straightforward. Your psychological growth challenges their safe space, and nobody enjoys being compelled to face their own stagnation. Maybe you're experiencing precisely this situation right now. You began to perceive differently, behave differently, perhaps even challenge things you previously accepted without question. And suddenly you started to feel isolated, misunderstood, criticized. What nobody explained to you, and what Nietzsche grasped better than anyone, is that this is the cost of developing a resilient mind. Not just any form of resilience, but a resilience so profound, so authentic, that it disturbs others. It frightens them. It reveals, without uttering a word, the frailty of those who still exist on automatic pilot. But why does this occur? Because a genuinely formidable mind poses a danger to collective ordinariness. And Nietzsche was explicit about this. When you choose to think independently, establish your own principles, and reject the comforting fantasy of predetermined truths, you become threatening. Threatening to the system, threatening to others, and most significantly, threatening to your previous self. This content is a summons, a dare. It's not created for those who are satisfied, nor for those who seek simple solutions. It's created for you who are exhausted from being captive to your own uncertainties, who senses being on the edge of an internal breakthrough, and who is prepared to construct something that nobody can demolish. A mind that nobody can control. A mind that terrifies because it refuses to yield. So if you feel prepared for this journey, a solitary, demanding, but absolutely transformative journey, continue watching. Because what Nietzsche has to reveal will challenge you, but it can also liberate you. And afterward, you will never perceive the world the same way again. Nietzsche wasn't merely a philosopher. He was a surgeon of the human spirit, someone who possessed the bravery to peer into the void of existence and not only confront it, but plunge into it. And it is precisely in that void, in that internal turmoil that many evade, that he discovered the wellspring of genuine strength. Because for Nietzsche, it isn't in tranquility, stability, or structure that a human being evolves. It's in anguish. It's in the collapse. It's in chaos. He wrote, "You must harbor chaos within yourself to birth a dancing star. This isn't poetic imagery. It's psychological assessment. It signifies that if you wish to construct an unshakable mind, you must abandon the naive notion that it will occur through comfort, superficial motivation, or positive declarations. No. Authentic strength emerges when you confront suffering without escaping, when you cease demanding life to be simpler and begin desiring to be stronger. Consider the moments you developed most. Was it when everything was perfect? Or was it when you were broken, lost, without direction, having to reconstruct yourself with your own hands? Nietzsche believed that suffering wasn't an error of existence, but rather its primary catalyst. He didn't romanticize pain. He confronted it as an instrument. And if you can alter your relationship with pain, with failure, with isolation, you begin to shape something extraordinary, an unconquerable spirit. And it's precisely there that the world begins to be unsettled by you. Because while most flee from chaos, you will master walking within it. While others plead for normalcy, you will create magnificence. But this transformation demands a brutal separation from everything you were taught about strength. Being strong isn't about smiling constantly. It isn't about maintaining false emotional regulation. Being strong is enduring the insufferable and emerging on the other side even more formidable. But Nietzsche understood that chaos alone isn't sufficient. You can be devastated by it if you lack an inner core, an anchor. And that's why in the next segment, we'll discuss the most crucial moment of Nietzschean philosophy, when he kills God and places upon you the complete burden of existential accountability. Because when there's no longer a heaven to look toward, it's within you that the universe must be created. If this content resonates with you, hit the subscribe button and join Beyond the Mind. Thank you for your support. When Nietzsche proclaimed God is dead, he wasn't celebrating. He was issuing an alert that many still don't comprehend today. What he eliminated wasn't a divine entity itself. He eliminated the illusion. The illusion that there exists a higher power managing everything. The illusion that there's a plan, a predetermined purpose, a meaning provided by someone external. The death of God represents the end of any justification. And that's terrifying because until then, it was simple to delegate responsibility for your existence. It was reassuring to believe that everything has a reason, that suffering is part of a divine scheme, that there's a greater purpose that will validate everything eventually. Nietzsche violently removes this veil. He looks you directly in the eyes and declares, "You are alone. There's no ready-made meaning. Now you are the architect." And this is where the genuine construction of a powerful mind commences. Because most individuals collapse when they realize they're alone facing chaos, without instructions, without guarantees, with nobody to blame. But those who possess the courage to confront this without crumbling begin to forge an unshakable consciousness. With the death of God, Nietzsche pushes you into the abyss of radical liberty. You shouldn't follow commandments. You must create values. You shouldn't obey. You must transcend yourself. It's the birth of brutal autonomy, and with it comes the weight. Everything now depends on you. There's no more absolution. There's no more salvation. Either you construct yourself or you perish. But here's the secret. This freedom that frightens you is also the greatest source of power you can possess. When you understand that nobody will come to rescue you, something within you awakens. A fire that compels you to rise even while bleeding, that forces you to think for yourself, to feel for yourself, to act not because someone said it's correct, but because you decided it is. It's in this rupture with existential supports that Nietzsche prepares the foundation for something even more magnificent. The emergence of a new way of being. A type of human being who doesn't live according to herd rules, who doesn't need approval or permission. A being who creates their own morality, who surpasses their own limitations and lives as a creator. A being that frightens the weak because it forces them to see themselves as they truly are. This being has a name. Nietzsche called it the Übermensch, the overman, and it's about him that we'll speak now. Because if you want to build a mind so strong that nobody can break it, you need to understand how to become this figure who lives above conventions, guided only by their own will to power. Let's explore this. Nietzsche didn't believe in the slow and passive evolution of humanity. He believed in rupture, in radical transformation, in creative destruction. And that's why he conceived the idea of the Übermensch, the overman. It's not about a superhero. It's not someone with mystical abilities. The Übermensch is a being who has overcome everything that binds the ordinary person. Guilt, obedience, herd morality, the need for acceptance. The Übermensch doesn't seek to be accepted. He doesn't ask permission to exist. He creates his own internal laws and lives by them, even if that puts him against the entire world. And that's exactly why his mind becomes unbreakable, because it's not built on others' expectations. It doesn't need external approval to validate itself. It's self-sufficient. It feeds on its own will to power, the deep impulse to shape reality in its own image. This is the central point. The Übermensch doesn't adapt to the world. He imposes meaning on the world. He doesn't seek comfort. He seeks greatness. He doesn't ask, "Is this permitted?" He asks, "Is this worthy of me?" And this shift in perspective changes everything. Because when you start to see yourself as a creator, not as a servant, the way you think, act, and feel transforms completely. But here lies the problem. Becoming this kind of being requires sacrifice. You'll have to eliminate parts of yourself that still beg for approval. You'll have to face the pain of not belonging. You'll have to bear the weight of building your identity from scratch, without guarantees, without encouragement, without applause from the audience. And most people cannot handle it. They surrender before they begin. They run back to the safety of ready-made beliefs, dogmas, and rules that someone else wrote for them. The path to the Übermensch is lonely, and Nietzsche knew this. He himself lived on the margins, misunderstood, called mad, isolated from the world he was trying to liberate. But it was in that isolation that he found his freedom. And this is what you need to understand. The stronger your mind becomes, the further you drift from the masses. The higher you rise, the more you disturb. The construction of the Übermensch is the most brutal and transformative process anyone can face because it requires you to destroy everything that isn't yours, everything that has been imposed on you by a sick culture, by a society that rewards obedience and punishes authenticity. And only after destroying do you begin to build. But this construction doesn't happen amidst the crowd. It happens in silence, in withdrawal, in the deep solitude that separates the strong from the weak. And that's exactly why in the next part, we'll dive into the most neglected and most powerful aspect of this journey: the solitude of the strong. Because the truth is that to become unshakable, you will have to learn to walk alone, and few are ready for that. Are you? If there's something that nobody tells you about the path of mental strength, it's this. The stronger you become, the more isolated you feel. And it's not because you isolate yourself by choice. It's because the world starts to not know what to do with you. Nietzsche spoke clearly about this. The free spirit, the one who breaks away from common morality, who doesn't accept easy truths, who thinks for themselves, inevitably distances themselves from the herd. And that distancing hurts. But that pain is necessary because real growth requires space, and you can't grow while being tied to others' expectations. Most people live within an invisible herd where every thought is policed, every action is measured by others' reactions. You've gotten used to walking in a group, thinking like the group, feeling secure because there are people around you. But what Nietzsche proposes is the opposite. He tears you away from that comfort and throws you into the desert. In that desert, there are no applause, no praise, no guide. There's only you, your doubts, your traumas, your fears, your desire to give up. And that's where the real test begins. Because what will most people do? They'll run back. They'll hide again behind their masks. They'll pretend they don't feel, that they don't think, that they don't see. But you, if you truly want to become someone that nobody can break, will have to stay. You'll have to endure the silence that reveals who you really are. Nietzsche said, The individual must always struggle not to be overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try, you will often feel lonely and sometimes scared. But no price is too high to pay for possessing yourself. That is the essence, the possession of oneself, the rarest and most powerful achievement anyone can attain. Because when you truly possess yourself, nobody else can control you. Nobody else dictates your worth. And nobody else can bring you down. But this possession comes with the weight of loneliness. You'll lose people. You'll be misunderstood. You'll hear that you're arrogant, strange, distant. They'll try to pull you back into the mold. They'll call you crazy, cold, insensitive. But that's the price of not being domesticated. It's the price of not needing applause. It's the price of not living as a mirror of others' needs. And here's the raw truth. If you cannot stand loneliness, you're not ready for freedom. Because all real freedom comes with abandonment. Abandonment of emotional crutches, of comfortable illusions, of utilitarian friendships. That's why Nietzsche saw solitude as a privilege, a battlefield where the true self finally has space to emerge. But this free mind, this elevated spirit, doesn't just walk alone. It begins to see what others don't see. And with that comes the second inevitable effect, the confrontation with mediocrity. Because when you start to become strong, the collective mediocrity feels it, and it reacts. And that's exactly what we'll talk about next. The danger of collective mediocrity. Because the world doesn't pursue those who are the same. It pursues those who dare to stand out. Nietzsche didn't fear tyrants, authoritarian leaders, or declared oppressors. What he feared and denounced with philosophical fury was the subtle and corrosive power of collective mediocrity, that invisible system that keeps everyone leveled down, that punishes those who dare to think differently, that rewards obedience and disguises cowardice as virtue. True tyranny, according to Nietzsche, doesn't come from above. It comes from the sides. It comes from the crowd that demands you remain small so that they don't have to grow. And that's exactly what happens when you start to stand out. When your mind becomes sharper, your spirit firmer, your presence more uncomfortable, you begin to disturb, not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing something rare. You're breaking the mold, and society hates those who break molds. Collective mediocrity cannot stand individual brilliance because that brilliance exposes the darkness of ordinary life. Nietzsche called this the slave morality, a morality built by those who, unable to achieve greatness, decided to invert values. They transformed strength into arrogance, ambition into selfishness, independence into coldness, and with that, they created a moral system that protects the weak and condemns the strong. But make no mistake, it's not out of compassion, it's out of resentment. Because the weak don't want to be saved, they want the strong to be destroyed. That's why when you start to liberate yourself, they begin to attack you. Sometimes directly, sometimes subtly, with looks, silence, irony. But the message is clear. Go back to the group. You're making us feel small, and you are unintentionally, just by being who you are. Nietzsche understood that most people live in a state of paralyzing conformity, an existence shaped by fear, guilt, and obedience. And anyone who questions this state is seen as a threat. But don't be fooled. Mediocrity doesn't attack with force. It attacks with numbers, with consensus, with the weight of repetition. It'll try to make you doubt yourself. It'll make you think you're wrong for not fitting in. It'll use all social resources, from shame to exclusion, to make you lower your head. And it's at this moment that many give up. because they cannot bear to be the strange, the difficult, the arrogant. But Nietzsche would give you another name: necessary. Because while the world revolves around recycled ideas, manufactured desires, and comfortable truths, it's the strong individual who brings the necessary discomfort for something new to be born. Your difference is the spark of transformation, but it's also the target of resistance. Being strong, thinking freely, living autonomously, all of this is an act of war against collective mediocrity. And like any war, it requires preparation. It requires weapons, but not physical weapons, mental weapons. And that's exactly what we'll talk about now in the final part. Because there's a very high cost to developing a mind so strong that it frightens. But there's also a reward that nobody can take away. In the next part, you'll understand the price and the power of being unbreakable. You made it this far. That already sets you apart from the majority. Most people would have closed this video at the first provocation. They would have run away at the first discomfort. They would have turned it off the moment they realized this isn't content meant to stroke the ego. It's a call to action. A call for those who are ready to let go of the comfortable illusion and face reality with their eyes wide open. Because building a mind so strong that it becomes feared isn't just a choice. It's a renunciation. You will lose. You'll lose friendships that were based on superficiality. You'll lose opportunities that require submission. You'll lose the ability to be content with little. But in exchange, you gain something priceless: integrity, clarity, presence. You'll begin to notice that most people live in a slumber, and that your lucidity is frightening. That your firmness makes others tremble. That your absence is louder than the presence of many. This strength doesn't come from outside. It's not taught in self-help books, nor is it earned with ready-made phrases or empty affirmations. It's dug deep within the soul, in the silence of difficult nights, in the choices that nobody sees. It's the result of an internal war between who you were and who you're becoming. And this war has no end, because the truly strong aren't those who have won. They're those who continue to fight even when they could already stop. Nietzsche didn't want to create followers. He wanted to provoke internal earthquakes. He wanted you to stop crawling for approval, to stop begging for meaning, to stop seeking in ready-made systems what can only be built with blood, sweat, and awareness. He wanted you to become dangerous, not in a violent sense, but in a rare sense. So rare that your mere existence forces others to look in the mirror and confront what they're avoiding. And now I want to invite you to do something that will solidify this process. Write in the comments a truth you're tired of hiding, an opinion you're afraid to voice, a thought that makes you feel isolated, but that represents who you truly are. This is part of the journey, claiming your voice, showing your presence, and more than that, declaring that you will no longer bend. And if this video touched you, if something inside you was awakened, don't stop here. Subscribe to Beyond the Mind for more content like this. The journey continues, and if you've made it this far, you know you're not watching just out of curiosity. You're here because something inside you has already begun to change. So keep going. You're not alone. You're just ahead. And that, my friend, is frightening, but it's also liberating.